big difference, except they wouldn't make as much profit. But in the near future, gas will drop back to that because the threat of hydrogen is going to compete with it so much they're going to have to drop their prices. Or if they go the other way and raise their prices as a last-ditch effort to squeeze the last bit of profits out before the hydrogen age comes in, and my guess is that they're just going to accelerate people stop using what they're offering.
So why is it safer?
Oh, why is it safer? Inside my system, at any one time, there is not more than a soda can full of hydrogen. It's being made on demand as the engine uses it, and it uses it just as fast as it's being made. So there's very little storage. You don't need a tank. It's called hydrogen on demand. Now, if you notice on those tubes on the back of that dune buggy, there's rubber caps. I have actually taken a big lighter and lit that to see what would happen, and it blows the top off of it, that's all. Not a very scientific way to investigate, but I had a big sheet of plastic between me and it and gloves. But all it does is pop the top off like a champagne cork. So it's not dangerous. It's actually safer. In a car that was production model, you'd have a tank of water in place of a tank of gasoline. Also, imagine an airline running with tanks of water instead of tanks of fuel and converting on demand the amount of hydrogen it needs. And there would be less than a cooler, a picnic cooler full of hydrogen stored anywhere on that plane. And it would immediately boom. If it got lit, it would just boom right there, and that would be it. And if it was a breakaway tank, it wouldn't do anything. So yeah.
Is that on the hydrogen, on the storing the water particularly all the time, that's more along the fuel cell technology, right?
No, fuel cell is totally opposite of what I do. A fuel cell is an anode and a cathode, which is just positive and negative electrical conductor inside of some kind of electrolyte like water with potassium chloride or something in it. And it's hollow, and they pump hydrogen stored from a tank into one tube and oxygen into the other tube. And that leaches through the porous material like a carbon filament. It'll leach through, and as soon as it hits the water, it causes a reverse reaction because those two things under electricity want to go back together. And what they're doing is, when they do go back together, they create electricity. Now, to give you an example of how efficient that has become is, everybody heard Warren Buffett recently bought the Burlington Northern Railroad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess why he did that?
They went hydrogen.
He has a company called, I can't remember, it's something other vehicles. But he bought that company too. That company makes a fuel cell, which takes stored hydrogen in big tanks, which is practical on a train, because you can take a big tank car and fill it with hydrogen. But they're storing it as metal hydride, which is a solid salt, and it can be converted back to liquid or into a vapor hydrogen real easy. So they're using one whole car as an engine to take hydrogen and make fuel cells and generate electricity and run their electric motors on the train. And he just demonstrated a train in California doing that, and Schwarzenegger came and blessed it, you know. Oh, how green we are. So I always wondered why Buffett bought trains when they seem to be on their way out, but now with this technology, they're definitely on their way back.
No, what I've seen on it as far as vehicles go, with the electrolysis going in the fuel cell, basically it runs continuously. So
Well,
you
there's two
basically
things.
almost plug
Some
your
people
vehicle in.
call hydrogen cells fuel cells, but you have to just delineate the two. A fuel cell actually makes electricity from combining hydrogen and oxygen. A hydrogen cell takes water and splits hydrogen and oxygen out and gives you hydrogen and oxygen from electricity being put into it. So it's very different, but very similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of these cars weigh a couple of tons. What kind of power do you get from this?
Well, the power comes out of the engine. The Volkswagen engine, I think, is about 36 or 40 horsepower.
I mean, how big would the engine have to be, or how small would it have
Well, that engine's only 36 horsepower, and it's running two or three people can, well, not three, but
Yeah,
two
but
people in luggage can go in
to be?
there.
That's not a 2-ton car.
No,
I'm
but,
talking about a car.
well, I have a Dodge van, I have a Ford Windstar van at home, and I get 139 miles per gallon on that in hybrid mode, and that's a passenger van, and it's got a V6 3.8 liter in it.
Is it about the same size as a gasoline V6?
It is a gasoline V6.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just converted to run on hydrogen as well as gas. It's in a hybrid mode. But it was easier for me to buy this car and modify it because that particular van is very hard to get to the back side of the engine. Change spark plugs, you gotta, I don't know how you do it, but,
Lift it up and
yeah,
Plus the display.
it's a mess. It's very hard to get to, and I found it frustrating to work on it. So I said, number one is that's a fuel rail, fuel injecting car, and getting hydrogen to work in fuel injectors is not that easy. And the timing issues are controlled by a computer on the car, which I found that was problematic, although I invented 2 ways around it. But I wanted to go back to something like a Model T that was a carburetor, a basic engine, and a basic car, and that I could just get to it from every angle with a wrench and do what I wanted. And so I bought that dune buggy, and I'm very happy I did, because when I proved my technology on that car, it's very easy to change it over and adapt it to the other car. But right now we're having major car companies, international, global business size company, I don't want to mention who it is, but it's huge. But it's not American, I'll tell you that. They came and spent time with me this past weekend. I showed them my technology. They made a huge, huge offer for my technology. And they had to come back with their engineers and verify it all, due diligence and all that.
And basically, the only reason that no American company would be there is they're too tightly tied in with the oil.
I don't know that to be true, but I suspect 100%
Same as
suspicion that it is.
Yeah.
We probably won't hear from you again either. Then.
Well, let me tell you about Stanley Meyer.
Yeah.
You can Google Stanley Meyer. He did what I'm doing in the 1990s. He built a dune buggy. It was different than that, but it was still a Volkswagen dune buggy. He ran it on water. He drove from Los Angeles to New York on 5 or 10 gallons of water. And the story goes on the internet that he was offered $2 billion by what is assumed to be oil interests or big money interests, and turned it down because they were intending to bury his technology. And he got poisoned in a restaurant that he ate at all the time. And he came running out in the parking lot and keeled over and vomited and said, "Oh my God, I've been poisoned," and he died. And that was after he turned them down. So I don't eat at the same restaurants anymore.
I think Fred Tucker changed his too.
Yeah.
You know, Calvin Coolidge said, talking about the finances of your car, if I remember correctly, Calvin Coolidge said the business of the United States is business.
Yeah.
And that's why the oil companies, there was a rumor, I believe, in the late 30s about an engine like what you're talking about. They weren't specific, but there was a rumor going around saying, hey, they got cars that can go 100 miles for a gallon of fuel.
Yeah, they do, and they have.
At that time.
Yeah.
But nobody could be specific about it. Nobody knew anything about it. It was like a rumor.
Yeah, that was probably Charles Poe. That was his carburetor.
But Calvin Coolidge was right. That's why you got a nice offer from him.
Yeah. Well, my offer, I told them, just as a test, because they told me that their company has a large interest from the Saudis. And I said, well, I'm sorry, we're going to have lunch, but we're not going to talk anymore because I'm not going to do business with you. I don't care how much money you're offering me. I'm not going to do business with oil companies. They said, no, you don't understand. The Saudis understand that the oil is coming to an end. They want to leverage the next technology. I said, that sounds good, but usually what that means is you buy it and bury it. And I said, so if we are to do any business, if I'm even going to consider your offer, there will be a 3 to 5 year window, whatever you